A billionaire CEO fired the delivery driver who dared to correct her mistake in front of her entire board. 2 months later, she discovered he wasn't just a driver, he was the hidden heir to her company's biggest rival, and he'd been investigating her all along. But by then, it was too late. She'd already fallen in love with him. This is Tyler and Rachel's story, a tale of hidden identities, unexpected love, and the discovery that the person you underestimate might be the one who changes everything. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching from right now? City and country! It's amazing to see our Deep Stories community growing around the world. If you believe that people aren't always what they seem, that love can bloom in unexpected places, and that sometimes the delivery driver knows more than the CEO, hit that subscribe button. This is Tyler and Rachel's journey, a story about identity, truth, and learning that worth has nothing to do with job titles. Let's begin. Tyler Bennett stood in the break room of Quick Ship Delivery Services at 5:30 in the morning, pulling on the company's standard-issue polo shirt, red with a yellow logo that had faded from too many washes. At 28 years old, he'd been working as a delivery driver for 6 months, and he'd gotten comfortable with the routine. Early mornings, long routes through Seattle's neighborhoods, packages dropped at doorsteps, polite nods to customers who barely saw him. Most people looked right through delivery drivers. Tyler had learned that quickly. He was part of the landscape, like mailboxes or street signs, necessary but invisible. And that was exactly what he'd wanted when he'd taken this job. His phone buzzed. A text from a number he'd blocked 3 times, but that kept finding ways to reach him. "Tyler, this is absurd. Come home. The board is asking questions." "Father," Tyler deleted the message without responding, just like he'd deleted the 50 messages before it. He shoved his phone into his pocket, grabbed his scanner and route sheet, and headed out to his delivery van. The truth was, Tyler Bennett wasn't supposed to be here. He wasn't supposed to be loading boxes into a van at dawn or driving through traffic or eating lunch from a food truck. According to his family's plan, Tyler was supposed to be in a corner office at Bennett Industries, learning to take over a tech empire worth $3 billion. But Tyler had walked away from all of that 18 months ago, and he hadn't looked back. His father, Richard Bennett, was the founder and CEO of Bennett Industries, one of the largest cloud infrastructure companies in the country. Tyler had grown up in wealth so extreme it felt fictional. Private schools, summer homes, cars that cost more than most people's houses. He'd been groomed from childhood to take over the company, sent to Wharton for business school, introduced to investors and board members like he was a product being prepared for launch. And Tyler had hated every minute of it. Not the privilege, he understood he'd been lucky. Born into circumstances most people would never experience. What he hated was the emptiness of it. The way every relationship felt transactional. The way people looked at him and saw dollar signs instead of a human being. The way his father measured Tyler's worth entirely by his usefulness to the company. When Tyler's mother died, cancer, sudden and brutal, his father had given him exactly 3 days to grieve before calling him into a meeting about quarterly projections. "Your mother would want you to be strong," Richard had said, as if strength meant ignoring grief and returning to work like nothing had happened. That was the moment Tyler realized he couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't become his father. He couldn't spend his life building wealth while forgetting how to be human, so he'd left. No dramatic confrontation, no final speech. He'd simply packed a bag, withdrawn enough cash to last a few months, and disappeared. He'd changed his phone number, cut ties with everyone who knew him as Tyler Bennett, the heir, and started over. For 6 months, he'd worked odd jobs: restaurant server, warehouse worker, retail clerk. He'd learned what it felt like to be tired at the end of the day from actual labor instead of stress. He'd learned what it meant to earn a paycheck that reflected hours worked instead of inherited wealth. He'd learned to be invisible, and then he'd taken the delivery job at Quick Ship. And everything had changed again. Because one of Tyler's regular delivery routes included Morrison, a mid-sized software company that, according to the business news Tyler still couldn't help following, was Bennett Industries' fastest-growing competitor. Morrison had developed a new cloud security platform that was stealing market share from Bennett Industries at an alarming rate. The tech blogs were calling it the Bennett Killer. Tyler's father was furious about it. Before Tyler had left, he'd sat through countless board meetings, where Richard ranted about Morrison Tech's CEO, a woman named Rachel Morrison, who'd built her company from nothing and was now threatening Bennett Industries' dominance. She's aggressive, reckless, and she's going to crash and burn, Richard had said. And when she does, we'll buy her company for pennies and absorb whatever's worth keeping. But Rachel Morrison hadn't crashed and burned. She'd thrived. And when Tyler realized his delivery route included her building, he'd felt something stir. Curiosity, maybe. Or the remnants of his business school training that had taught him to analyze competitors. He'd started paying attention to Morrison Tech, watching the company from the outside, delivering packages to their office and observing the culture, the energy, the way employees talked about their work. And what he'd seen had surprised him. Morrison Tech felt different from Bennett Industries. Where his father's company was cold and hierarchical, Morrison Tech seemed collaborative and innovative. Employees seemed genuinely excited about what they were building. And at the center of it all was Rachel Morrison, a CEO who, from everything Tyler could observe, actually cared about her company beyond its market value. He'd become quietly obsessed with understanding how she'd done it, how she'd built something that felt alive when his father's empire felt like a machine. He'd started doing research in his free time, reading about Rachel's background, studying Morrison Tech's strategy, trying to understand what made her different. And then, 3 weeks ago, Tyler had been making a delivery to Morrison Tech's office when he'd overheard something. That had changed everything. He'd been dropping off a package at the reception desk when 2 employees had walked past him, deep in conversation. They'd been talking about a potential security vulnerability in Morrison Tech's new platform, something about encryption protocols that might not be as robust as the company claimed. Tyler had frozen. He knew enough about cloud security from his years at Bennett Industries to recognize that what they were describing was serious. If Morrison Tech's platform had a vulnerability and the company didn't know about it, or worse, knew and was hiding it, that was a massive problem. A problem that could destroy the company if it were exploited, and a problem that Bennett Industries would absolutely capitalize on if they found out about it. Tyler had stood there, holding his scanner invisible in his red polo shirt, and felt a decision crystallizing. He could walk away, keep living his anonymous life, let whatever happened happen, or he could dig deeper. Figure out if Morrison Tech really had a vulnerability, and if they did, what Rachel Morrison planned to do about it. He'd told himself he was doing it out of professional curiosity, because he still cared about the industry, still had an analyst's brain that couldn't ignore a potential scandal. But the truth was more complicated. He wanted to know if Rachel Morrison was different, or if she was just another CEO willing to sacrifice ethics for profit, just like his father. So Tyler had started investigating, carefully, quietly, using the access his delivery job gave him. He'd struck up conversations with Morrison Tech employees, asked casual questions, pieced together information. He'd learned that yes, there was a vulnerability, and yes, Rachel knew about it. But what she planned to do about it, that was still unclear. And then, 2 weeks ago, everything had gotten more complicated. Because Tyler had met Rachel Morrison face to face, and nothing had gone the way he'd expected. Rachel Morrison woke up at 5 a.m. like she did every weekday, in her apartment overlooking Puget Sound. The view was one of the few luxuries she allowed herself. Everything else in her life was optimized for efficiency. Her apartment was minimalist. Her closet contained 7 identical work outfits to eliminate decision fatigue, and her meals were delivered pre-made so she didn't waste time cooking. At 32 years old, Rachel had built Morrison Tech from a startup in her garage to a company worth $50 million. It had taken 8 years of relentless work, 18-hour days, countless rejections from investors, relationships sacrificed, social life non-existent. But she'd done it. She'd proven that a woman from a working-class background with no connections and no inheritance could build something that mattered in an industry dominated by men from wealthy families. She'd proven she didn't need anyone. Rachel had grown up in Tacoma, the daughter of a factory worker and a waitress, Money had been tight, not desperate, but always a concern. She'd watched her parents work themselves exhausted just to keep the family afloat, and she'd sworn she'd never be in that position. She'd gotten into University of Washington on a full scholarship, majored in computer science, graduated top of her class, and immediately started working at a mid-sized tech company where she'd quickly realized two things. She was smarter than most of her colleagues, and she was never going to advance as quickly as the men around her, so she'd quit and started her own company. If the system wasn't going to let her rise, she'd build her own system. Morrison Tech's first product had been a failure, a project management tool that no one wanted. The second had been mediocre, a data analytics platform that got some traction but never scaled. But the third product, a cloud security system that used AI to predict and prevent breaches before they happened, had been a hit. Suddenly, Morrison Tech was growing fast, hiring employees, attracting attention from investors and competitors. Rachel had thrived in the chaos of growth. She was good at making decisions quickly, good at seeing problems before they became crises, good at pushing her team to exceed what they thought was possible. She demanded excellence and she delivered it. Her employees feared her a little, but they also respected her because she never asked them to work harder than she worked herself. But success had come with costs. Rachel had no close friends. She'd lost touch with college connections years ago, and she didn't have time to build new ones. She hadn't been in a relationship in 4 years. Her parents worried about her, but she saw them maybe twice a year. She'd optimized her life for business success, and everything else had fallen away. She told herself she was fine with it. This was what she'd chosen. Building Morrison Tech mattered more than anything else, except lately something had been bothering her. A problem she couldn't optimize her way out of. Morrison Tech's cloud security platform had a vulnerability. Not a catastrophic one, but significant enough that if someone exploited it, the results could be bad. Rachel had discovered it 3 months ago during internal testing, and she'd immediately ordered her team to fix it. But fixing it was complicated. It required rewriting core elements of the platform's architecture, which meant taking the system partially offline, which meant disrupting service for their clients, which meant risking contracts and reputation. Rachel's CTO had given her a timeline, 6 months to fix it properly without disrupting clients. But 6 months was a long time to have a known vulnerability. If a competitor found out, especially Bennett Industries, who Rachel knew was looking for any excuse to discredit her, it could destroy everything she'd built. She'd made the decision to keep the vulnerability quiet while they fixed it. No public announcement, no warnings to clients, just a quiet repair job. It was a calculated risk, but Rachel believed in her team's ability to patch it before anyone noticed. But it was eating at her, because keeping the vulnerability secret felt like the kind of thing the CEOs she'd always despised would do. The kind of thing Richard Bennett would do. Hide problems, prioritize optics over transparency, protect the company at the expense of honesty. Rachel had built Morrison Tech on a promise to be different. To be ethical, to prioritize people over profit. To do things the right way even when it was hard. And now here she was, hiding a security flaw because acknowledging it publicly might hurt her business. She told herself it was temporary, that once the fix was complete, she'd be transparent about what had happened. But in her quieter moments, she wondered if she was rationalizing, if she was becoming exactly what she'd sworn she'd never be. These were the thoughts running through Rachel's mind as she drove to the office that Tuesday morning, which was why she wasn't paying attention when she nearly collided with a delivery driver in the Morrison Tech parking garage. She'd been pulling into her reserved spot, distracted by her phone when she'd seen movement in her peripheral vision and slammed the brakes. Her car stopped inches from a man in a red polo shirt who'd been walking past with a handcart stacked with boxes. Rachel rolled down her window. "Sorry, are you okay?" The delivery driver looked at her, really looked at her in a way that made Rachel suddenly self-conscious, and smiled. Not a polite customer service smile, but something warmer. "I'm fine. You should probably watch where you're going, though. These boxes are heavy." There was humor in his voice, no anger or irritation despite the fact that she'd almost hit him. Rachel found herself smiling back. "You're right, sorry, long morning." "It's 7 a.m. the driver said. How long can your morning have been? You'd be surprised. Rachel turned off her car and got out, grabbing her bag from the passenger seat. What are you delivering? Server components, I think. Your IT department orders them weekly. He gestured to the boxes. I'm Tyler, by the way. I do this route every Tuesday and Thursday. Rachel, she said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, his hands calloused in a way that suggested he did physical work. She noticed his eyes, dark, intelligent, assessing her with an intensity that felt unusual for a delivery driver making small talk. Thanks for not letting me run you over. Thanks for stopping, Tyler said. Listen, I know this is random, but can I ask you something? Rachel checked her watch. She had a meeting in 20 minutes, but found herself nodding. Sure. I've been delivering to this building for a while, and I'm curious about what you all do here. Morrison Tech, right? Something with cloud security? That's right. Rachel was used to people not understanding her industry. We help companies protect their data from breaches. Interesting. Tyler shifted the weight of his handcart. Do you work here? I'm the CEO, Rachel said, and saw surprise flicker across his face. Seriously? That's impressive. You must be good at what you do. Rachel waited for the usual follow-up questions. How old are you? How did you get here so young? What's it like being a woman in tech? But Tyler didn't ask any of them. Instead, he said, Do you like it? Running a company? It was such an unexpected question that Rachel answered honestly. Most days. Sometimes it's exhausting, but I like building things. Tyler nodded like he understood completely. Building things is good. Better than inheriting them anyway. It was an odd comment, specific in a way that made Rachel wonder about his story. But before she could ask, Tyler was already moving toward the building entrance. I should get these delivered. Nice meeting you, Rachel. Nice meeting you too, Tyler. Rachel watched him go, feeling strangely unsettled. There had been something about that conversation. Something in the way Tyler had looked at her. Like he saw more than just a CEO in expensive clothes and a Tesla. Like he saw her as a person. She shook off the feeling and headed into the office, already mentally preparing for her first meeting. She had a company to run. She didn't have time to think about delivery drivers with kind smiles and oddly perceptive questions. But over the next 2 weeks, Tyler kept showing up. Every Tuesday and Thursday, he'd be there with deliveries, and somehow they'd end up talking. Small conversations at first. 5 minutes in the parking garage or the lobby, casual chit-chat about weather or traffic. But gradually, the conversations deepened. Tyler asked questions that no one else asked. Not about the company's valuation or growth metrics, but about what Rachel wanted Morrison Tech to become. What she cared about beyond profit. Whether she thought success was worth the sacrifices it required, and Rachel found herself answering honestly. She told him about growing up without money, about wanting to build something that mattered, about the pressure of competing against companies like Bennett Industries that had resources she'd never have. Bennett Industries, Tyler had said when she mentioned the name. The cloud infrastructure giant? That's the one. Their CEO, Richard Bennett, is... Rachel had paused, searching for words. Let's just say he represents everything I don't want to be. He built an empire, but he did it by crushing people. He doesn't care about innovation or ethics, just dominance. And now he's trying to destroy Morrison Tech because we're threatening his market share. Tyler had listened without commenting, his expression neutral. Sounds stressful. It is. But it also motivates me. I want to prove you can build something successful without becoming a monster. She'd never said that out loud to anyone. Her employees wouldn't understand. They saw her as driven and demanding, not vulnerable. But somehow, talking to Tyler felt safe. Maybe because he was outside her world. Because there were no stakes in admitting her fears to a delivery driver who'd forget the conversation the moment he left. Except Tyler didn't forget. The next time they talked, he asked how she was handling the pressure. If she had people she could talk to. If she was taking care of herself. Rachel realized she'd started looking forward to Tuesdays and Thursdays. Started timing her arrivals at the office to coincide with Tyler's deliveries. Started caring about whether she looked tired or stressed because Tyler would notice. And then, 3 weeks after they'd met, Tyler had asked her to coffee. They'd been standing in the lobby, Tyler finishing a delivery, Rachel on her way to a meeting. He'd said it casually, like it wasn't a big deal. "Do you ever take breaks? Like actual breaks where you step away from work?" "Not really," Rachel admitted. "That's not healthy. You should take a break. Maybe coffee? There's a place near here that's supposed to be good." Rachel had hesitated. This was crossing a line. Tyler was a delivery driver. She was a CEO. They existed in completely different worlds. But she'd looked at him, at his open, honest expression, at the genuine interest in his eyes, and thought, why not? "Okay," she'd said. "Coffee sounds good." That coffee had turned into 2 hours of conversation that had flown by. They'd talked about everything: Rachel's company, Tyler's job, books they'd read, places they wanted to travel. Tyler was smart, funny, and disarmingly easy to talk to. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, it was thoughtful and interesting. Rachel had left that coffee feeling lighter than she'd felt in months, and that's when she'd started to realize she was in trouble. Because she was developing feelings for Tyler Bennett, the delivery driver, and she had absolutely no idea what to do about it. Tyler knew he was playing a dangerous game. What had started as investigation, quiet observation to understand Morrison Tech's vulnerability and Rachel's character, had turned into something he hadn't anticipated. He was falling for her. It shouldn't have been surprising. Rachel Morrison was brilliant, driven, and unexpectedly vulnerable beneath her CEO armor. In their conversations, Tyler saw glimpses of the person she'd been before building Morrison Tech consumed her life. Someone curious, passionate, uncertain about whether she was doing the right thing. But Tyler's deception was growing heavier every day. Every time Rachel opened up to him, shared her fears about the company or her doubts about her decisions, he felt the weight of his lie. She thought he was just a delivery driver, someone outside her world, someone she could trust with her honesty because the stakes were low. She had no idea he was Richard Bennett's son, that he'd grown up in the world of tech empires and boardroom warfare, that he understood exactly what she was up against because he'd watched his father employ every ruthless tactic imaginable to crush competitors like her. And she definitely had no idea that Tyler knew about Morrison Tech's security. Vulnerability, he'd confirmed it 2 weeks ago, piecing together information from overheard conversations and his own technical knowledge. The vulnerability was real and it was serious. Rachel's team was working to fix it, but they were moving slowly. Too slowly, in Tyler's opinion. If Bennett Industries discovered the flaw before Morrison Tech patched it, they could exploit it publicly, destroy Rachel's reputation, and potentially buy Morrison Tech at a fraction of its value, which was exactly what Tyler's father would do if he found out. Tyler had spent days wrestling with what to do with this information. The old version of himself, the Bennett Industries heir who'd been trained to think strategically about competition, knew he should tell his father. Give Richard the ammunition to take down Morrison Tech. It would probably earn Tyler his way back into the family if he wanted it, but Tyler didn't want it. And more importantly, he didn't want to hurt Rachel. He'd watched her work with genuine admiration. She was demanding but fair with her employees. She made tough decisions but agonized over them in ways his father never did. She'd built something real, something that mattered, and she'd done it without connections or inherited wealth or any of the advantages Tyler had grown up taking for granted. Rachel. Morrison deserved better than to be destroyed by Richard Bennett's ruthlessness. So Tyler had made a decision. He wouldn't tell his father about the vulnerability. Instead, he'd try to help Rachel fix it, quietly, without revealing who he was or what he knew. It was complicated. He couldn't directly tell Rachel he knew about the security flaw without explaining how he knew. But he could guide conversations, ask questions that might prompt her to think differently about the problem, maybe even suggest solutions disguised as curious observations from an outsider. It was manipulative, and Tyler hated himself for it. But he couldn't figure out a better option. If he revealed his identity now, admitted he was Richard Bennett's son who'd been investigating her company, Rachel would feel betrayed. She'd never trust him again. And Tyler was starting to realize that her trust mattered to him more than anything. He was in love with her. The realization had hit him last week during their third coffee date that Rachel kept insisting wasn't a date, even though it clearly was. She'd been talking about her parents, about how worried they were that she worked too much. And Tyler had seen such tenderness in her expression, love and guilt and determination all mixed together. "They sacrificed a lot for me to get my education," Rachel had said. "I feel like I owe it to them to make all this mean something, to prove their sacrifices weren't wasted." "I think you've already proven that," Tyler had told her. "You built a company from nothing. That's incredible. But maybe they just want you to be happy?" Rachel had looked at him with surprise, like happiness was a concept she'd forgotten existed. "I don't know if I know how to be happy anymore. I've optimized everything else out of my life." "Then maybe," Tyler had said gently, "you should optimize for happiness instead." She'd smiled, a real smile. Not her professional CEO smile, and Tyler had felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. He was in love with Rachel Morrison, and he was lying to her every day. It was going to end badly. Tyler knew that. But he couldn't seem to stop himself from showing up every Tuesday and Thursday, from extending their conversations, from finding excuses to see her outside delivery hours. And now, 5 weeks after their first conversation in the parking garage, they were having dinner together. An actual dinner at an actual restaurant, not coffee grabbed between meetings, but a real date that Rachel had finally stopped pretending wasn't a date. Tyler had dressed carefully for it, in clothes that were nicer than his delivery uniform, but not so nice they'd raise questions about how a delivery driver afforded them. He'd chosen a casual Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill, good food, comfortable atmosphere, the kind of place where they could talk without corporate acquaintances spotting Rachel. Rachel arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing profusely. "I'm sorry, there was a crisis at the office. We had a client report a potential security issue, and I had to make sure—" She stopped herself. "Sorry, I'm not supposed to be thinking about work tonight." "It's okay," Tyler said, standing to pull out her chair. "Crisis resolved? For now." Rachel sat down, looking tired but beautiful in a green dress that made her eyes brighter. "But honestly, there's always another crisis. That's the nature of running a company." "Sounds exhausting." "It is." Rachel picked up her menu, then set it down and looked at Tyler directly. "Can I ask you something? And I want you to be honest." "Of course." "Why are you interested in me?" Rachel's voice was vulnerable in a way Tyler had never heard. "I'm not fishing for compliments. I genuinely don't understand. You're kind and interesting, and you could probably date anyone. And I'm a workaholic CEO who barely has time for this dinner. What are you doing here?" Tyler felt his throat tighten. This was the moment where he should tell her the truth, or at least part of it. Explain that he wasn't just a delivery driver, that he came from wealth, that he understood her world better than she realized. But if he started down that path, he'd have to tell her everything, and he wasn't ready to lose her yet. So instead, he told her a truth that existed alongside his lies. "I'm here because you're the most interesting person I've met in years," Tyler said. "Because you're brilliant and driven and you care about things beyond yourself. Because when you talk about your company, I see someone who's trying to build something meaningful, not just profitable. And because when you let your guard down, even for a minute, I see someone who's fascinating and funny and deserves to have someone care about her happiness." Rachel's eyes were shining. "That's a really good answer. It's the truth." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I like you, Tyler. I didn't expect to, and I definitely didn't plan for this, but I do. You make me feel like maybe there's more to life than quarterly projections and board meetings." Tyler squeezed her hand, feeling like the worst person alive. "I like you too, Rachel. A lot." They had dinner, pasta and wine, and conversation that flowed easily, ranging from serious topics to ridiculous ones. Rachel told him about her worst investor pitch, where she'd accidentally called the lead investor by the wrong name for the entire meeting. Tyler told her about his most chaotic delivery, where he'd gotten locked in a building after hours and had to call the fire department to let him out. It was the best evening Tyler had spent in longer than he could remember. For a few hours, he wasn't Richard Bennett's runaway son or a man living under a false identity. He was just Tyler having dinner with someone he cared about, laughing at bad jokes and sharing stories. And when Tyler walked Rachel to her car at the end of the night, and she kissed him, tentatively at first. Then, with more certainty, he felt something break open in his chest. A mix of joy and terror because he knew this moment was perfect and built on foundations of lies. "Thank you for tonight," Rachel said, smiling up at him. "I needed this. I needed you." "Any time," Tyler said, meaning it completely. He watched her drive away, then sat in his own car for a long time, staring at nothing. He was going to have to tell her the truth eventually, but not yet. Not when things were finally good. Not when Rachel was finally letting herself be happy. Tyler would tell her soon. He promised himself that, just not yet. Over the next month, Tyler and Rachel fell into a relationship that existed in stolen moments between Rachel's demanding schedule. Coffee dates before work, lunch when Rachel could escape the office, dinners when crises allowed. Tyler adjusted his delivery routes to maximize time near Morrison Tech, and Rachel started actually taking breaks, something her assistant claimed was unprecedented. Rachel's employees noticed the change in her. She seemed lighter, less severe, occasionally caught smiling at her phone during meetings. Her CTO, a woman named Jennifer who'd worked with Rachel since the company's founding, pulled her aside one day and asked if she was okay. "I'm fine," Rachel said. "Better than fine, actually. You're different lately." "In a good way, less—" Jennifer searched for the word. "Less like you're about to spontaneously combust from stress." Rachel laughed. "Is that how I normally seem?" "Kind of, yeah." Jennifer studied her. "There's someone, isn't there?" "You're seeing someone." Rachel felt herself blushing, which was ridiculous. She was a 32-year-old CEO, not a teenager. "Maybe. It's new." "Good. You deserve to have a life outside this place." Jennifer's expression turned more serious. "Speaking of which, I need to talk to you about the security patch. We're behind schedule." The happiness drained from Rachel's face. "How far behind?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. "The architecture rewrite is more complicated than we anticipated. We might need to bring in outside contractors." "No outside contractors." Rachel's voice was firm. "The fewer people who know about this vulnerability, the better. We can't risk word getting out before it's fixed." "Rachel, I understand the concern, but we're stretched thin. The team is working overtime, and we're still not moving fast enough." "If we don't fix this soon, we'll fix it," Rachel interrupted. "We have to." "Whatever it takes, Jennifer. This company's reputation is built on security. If clients find out we've been operating with a known vulnerability, even temporarily, it'll destroy everything we've worked for." Jennifer looked like she wanted to argue, but nodded instead. "Okay, I'll push the team harder." After Jennifer left, Rachel sat at her desk, feeling the familiar weight of anxiety settling back over her shoulders. The security vulnerability was her constant nightmare. Every day it remained unfixed, felt like a ticking time bomb. And the worst part was that she couldn't talk to anyone about it. Not her board, not her investors. Definitely not Tyler. Especially not Tyler. Her relationship with him existed in a bubble separate from Morrison Tech's problems. When she was with Tyler, she could forget about vulnerabilities and competitors and the enormous pressure of running a company. He made her feel normal, like a person instead of a CEO. She wasn't about to contaminate that by dragging her professional anxieties into their time together, but keeping the secret was becoming harder. Rachel prided herself on honesty. It was one of the core values she'd built Morrison Tech around. And here she was, hiding a significant problem while telling herself it was justified because she was fixing it. The cognitive dissonance was eating at her. She texted Tyler, "Rough day. Can I see you tonight?" His response came within seconds. "Of course. My place?" "I'll cook," Rachel smiled despite her stress. Tyler's apartment was tiny, a studio in the university district that probably cost less per month than Rachel spent on clothes. But it was cozy and warm, filled with books and plants. And being there always made her feel calm. That evening, Rachel drove to Tyler's apartment, stopping on the way to buy wine because Tyler never had wine. "Delivery driver salary," he'd joked. Though Rachel had noticed he seemed to have enough money for nice dinners and decent clothes. She'd assumed he was just careful with his finances, which she respected. Tyler answered the door in a t-shirt and jeans, his hair slightly messy, and Rachel felt her stress begin to dissolve just looking at him. "Hi," he said, pulling her into a hug. Rough day? Understatement. Rachel handed him the wine. What are you cooking? Risotto. My one impressive culinary skill. Tyler led her to his small kitchen where a pot was already simmering on the stove. Sit, talk to me. What happened? Rachel sat at Tyler's tiny dining table and watched him cook, letting herself relax for the first time all day. Just work stuff. Problems that feel impossible to solve, timelines that keep slipping, pressure from every direction. Anything I can help with? Tyler asked, stirring the risotto with careful attention. Unless you secretly have a computer science degree and expertise in cloud security architecture, probably not. Rachel meant it as a joke, but Tyler's hand paused briefly on the spoon before continuing to stir. No computer science degree, he said lightly. But I'm a good listener if you want to vent. Rachel hesitated. She'd made a rule not to bring work problems into their relationship, but the weight of the secret was crushing her. Can I ask you something hypothetical? Sure. If you knew about a problem, something that could potentially hurt people if it wasn't handled correctly, but fixing it was complicated and you needed time, would you tell people about the problem immediately, even if telling them might cause panic and prevent you from being able to fix it properly? Tyler turned to look at her, his expression thoughtful. That's a tough question. I guess it depends on how serious the problem is. If people are in immediate danger, you'd have to tell them. But if you have time to fix it and telling them would make the situation worse, he trailed off. Why? Is this about Morrison Tech? Hypothetically. Tyler brought 2 plates of risotto to the table and sat down across from her. Hypothetically, I think the question isn't whether you tell people. It's whether you can live with yourself if something goes wrong before you fix it. Because if there's a problem and you're keeping it quiet, you're taking responsibility for any consequences. That's a heavy burden to carry alone. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. Tyler had articulated exactly what had been tormenting her. What if telling people would destroy everything you've built? Even if you were doing it to protect them? Then you'd have to decide what matters more, protecting what you've built or protecting your integrity. Tyler reached across the table and took her hand. But this is hypothetical, right? You're not actually dealing with something like this? Rachel wanted so badly to tell him the truth, to share the weight of the decision she was carrying, but she couldn't. Tyler was a delivery driver with no connection to the tech industry. He wouldn't understand the complexities of corporate security or competitive dynamics. And more importantly, she couldn't risk word getting out, even accidentally. Right, she said. Hypothetical. They ate dinner, and Tyler carefully steered the conversation to lighter topics. He told her about a delivery he'd made that week to a customer who'd answered the door in a full suit of medieval armor. Some kind of live-action role-play thing, I think. And Rachel found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in days. Later, as they sat on Tyler's small couch watching a movie neither of them was paying attention to, Rachel felt herself relaxing completely. This was what she needed. Not someone who understood tech industry politics or could advise her on corporate strategy. Just someone who made her feel like herself again. Tyler, she said quietly. Thank you. For being this, whatever this is. I didn't realize how much I needed it. Tyler pulled her closer. This is me being happy with you. That's all it needs to be. Rachel closed her eyes, letting herself feel safe for a moment. She'd deal with the security vulnerability tomorrow. Tonight, she just wanted this. What Rachel didn't know was that Tyler was dealing with his own crisis of conscience, because he'd recognized exactly what Rachel was talking about, the hypothetical problem that wasn't hypothetical at all. She was talking about Morrison Tech's security vulnerability, and she was carrying the burden of that decision alone. And Tyler, who could have helped her solve it if he revealed his background, was sitting next to her saying nothing, because telling her the truth would mean admitting he'd been investigating her company, which would destroy the trust they'd built. He was trapped in his own lies, unable to help the person he loved without destroying their relationship. So Tyler held Rachel and told himself he'd figure it out tomorrow. Find a way to guide her toward a solution without revealing what he knew. Somehow thread the needle between helping her and protecting his deception. But time was running out for both of them. And Tyler was starting to realize that his lies of omission were going to hurt Rachel just as much as the truth would. Maybe more. The crisis came 2 weeks later, in a way Tyler had dreaded but hadn't quite anticipated. He was making a delivery to Morrison Tech on a Thursday morning when he overheard two engineers talking in panicked voices near the server room. He'd been dropping off equipment at the IT department when their words stopped him cold. Can't be sure it's a breach, but the anomaly in the access logs looks suspicious. Did you tell Rachel? Jennifer's telling her now. If someone's been probing our systems and found the vulnerability... Tyler's blood went cold. Someone had discovered Morrison Tech's security flaw, or at least someone had been poking around their systems in ways that suggested they knew something was wrong, and Tyler had a terrible suspicion about who that someone might be. He finished his delivery as quickly as possible and immediately called a number he'd sworn he'd never call again. Bennett residence, answered his father's assistant. It's Tyler. I need to speak with my father now. There was a surprised pause. Mr. Bennett will be pleased to hear from you. One moment. Tyler waited, his heart pounding as the call transferred. Then his father's voice, controlled and cold. Tyler, how unexpected. Did you probe Morrison Tech's servers? Tyler demanded, skipping any pretense of pleasantries. Richard Bennett's pause told Tyler everything. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Morrison Tech. Did you have someone investigate their security systems? What I do with my company's resources is none of your concern. Tyler, you abdicated any right to that information when you walked away. Answer the question. Richard sighed, like Tyler was being tedious. We've been conducting routine competitive intelligence. If Morrison Tech has left vulnerabilities exposed, that's their failure, not ours. So you found it. Tyler's voice was flat. You found their security flaw, and you're going to exploit it. We're going to do what any rational company would do. Use our competitors' weakness to our advantage. Morrison Tech has been stealing our market share for 2 years. If they've been careless with their security, the market deserves to know. They're fixing it, Tyler said. They've been working on a patch for months. If you go public with this before they're ready, then they'll learn an important lesson about the costs of incompetence. Richard's voice turned sharper. Tyler, why do you care? You've been gone for 18 months. You've made it clear you want nothing to do with Bennett Industries. What's your interest in Morrison Tech? Tyler closed his eyes. This was the moment he'd been dreading. I've been investigating them. Have you? Richard sounded intrigued. From your position as a... What are you doing now? Retail? Food service? Delivery driver? And yes, I've had access to Morrison Tech. I've been observing them for months. Then you know about the vulnerability. Yes. And you didn't tell me? For the first time, Richard's voice held emotion, anger. You've known your family's company was being threatened by a competitor with a critical security flaw, and you said nothing? Because Rachel Morrison is fixing it, Tyler said. Because she's doing the right thing, even though it's costing her time and money and stress. Because she's better than you, Dad. She actually cares about ethics. Rachel? Richard's voice was suddenly very interested. You're on a first-name basis with Morrison Tech's CEO? Tyler realized his mistake too late. Tyler. Richard's voice had shifted to the tone he used when he'd identified a strategic advantage. What exactly have you been doing at Morrison Tech? Observing, research. Is that all? Because you sound rather protective of Ms. Morrison. Tyler said nothing, which was answer enough. Oh, Tyler. Richard actually laughed. You've gotten personally involved. With Richard Morrison's CEO. That's delightfully ironic. Leave her alone, Tyler said, his voice low and dangerous. Don't go public with the vulnerability. Give them time to fix it. Why would I do that? Business isn't about fairness, Tyler. It's about winning. And you've just given me another piece of leverage. What are you talking about? If you want me to delay publicizing Morrison Tech's security flaw, you'll come home. Resume your position at Bennett Industries. Stop this ridiculous working-class cosplay and be who you're supposed to be. Tyler felt fury building in his chest. This isn't cosplay. This is my life. And I'm not using Rachel as a bargaining chip. Then she'll face the consequences of her company's mistakes. I'll have our PR team draft the announcement this afternoon. Major security vulnerability discovered in Morrison Tech's flagship platform. complete with technical details and speculation about what data might already be compromised. Her clients will flee, her investors will panic, and will buy the company for pennies when it collapses. Richard paused. Unless you come home, you're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Your comfortable new identity and your girlfriend's career, or your family and your girlfriend's company. You can't have both. Tyler hung up without responding. His hands were shaking. He'd created this disaster. By investigating Morrison Tech, by getting close to Rachel, by not being honest from the beginning, he'd put her directly in his father's crosshairs. Richard now knew that hurting Rachel would hurt Tyler, which made her a target. And Tyler had maybe hours to figure out how to fix this before his father destroyed everything Rachel had built. He called Rachel. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight with stress. Tyler, I can't talk right now. We have a situation at the office. I know. Someone's been probing your systems. Tyler was already heading to his van. Rachel, I need to tell you something. Can you meet me? It's urgent. I really can't leave right now. Please. It's about Morrison Tech's security vulnerability. Rachel went silent. When she spoke again, her voice was very careful. What do you know about that? Everything! And I can help you, but I need to explain in person. Tyler started the van. There's a coffee shop 3 blocks from your office. Slate Coffee. Can you meet me there in 20 minutes? Tyler, how do you know about 20 minutes? Please, Rachel. Trust me. He hung up before she could ask more questions and drove to Slate Coffee with his heart pounding. This was it. The moment where everything came apart. He was going to tell Rachel the truth, all of it, and hope that somehow, impossibly, she'd understand. But he knew the odds were slim. Tyler had lied to her for months. Let her believe he was someone he wasn't. Let her trust him with her vulnerabilities while hiding his own identity. When she found out he was Richard Bennett's son, she'd feel betrayed in ways that might be irreparable. Still, Tyler had to try. Because Rachel deserved the truth and because she needed his help, whether she wanted it from him or not. He ordered coffee he didn't drink and waited. 23 minutes later, Rachel walked in. She looked stressed and confused and more than a little angry. Explain, she said without preamble, sitting down across from him. Right now. How do you know about Morrison Tech's security issue? Tyler took a breath. My name isn't Tyler Bennett. I mean, it is, but it's not the whole truth. My full name is Tyler Richard Bennett. My father is Richard Bennett, the CEO of Bennett Industries. Rachel stared at him. What? I'm Richard Bennett's son. I walked away from Bennett Industries 18 months ago because I didn't want to be part of my father's world. I took a delivery job, I tried to start over. And then my route included Morrison Tech, and I started paying attention. I heard about your security vulnerability, and I started investigating because I wanted to understand if you were different from my father or just another CEO willing to cut corners. Rachel's face had gone pale. You've been investigating my company? For 18 months? Not that long. A few months. Rachel, I know how this sounds. You lied to me. Rachel's voice was shaking. This entire time. Every conversation, every dinner, every moment I trusted you, you were lying. I wasn't lying about my feelings for you. Everything I've said about caring about you, about wanting to help you, that's all real. But you were investigating my company, gathering information. What, so you could report back to your father? Help him destroy Morrison Tech? No! Tyler reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I never told my father anything. I was trying to protect you. That's why I called you today, because my father found out about the vulnerability on his own, and he's planning to go public with it. He wants to destroy your company, and I'm trying to stop him. By telling me what? That you've been spying on me this whole time while pretending to be some working-class guy who understood what it was like to build something from nothing? Rachel stood up, her chair scraping loudly. You don't understand anything. You're a trust fund kid who was playing at being poor while I... Her voice broke. I trusted you, Tyler. I told you things I've never told anyone. I know. And I'm sorry. Rachel, please, we don't have time for this right now. My father is going to announce your security flaw publicly unless... Unless what? Tyler hesitated. Unless I come back to Bennett Industries. He's using you as leverage to get me to return to the company. Rachel laughed bitterly. Of course he is. And let me guess. You're here to tell me you're going to sacrifice yourself for my company? Play the hero? That's very noble. Except you're the one who put me in this position in the first place by lying to me for months. I know I did, and I'll spend the rest of my life apologizing for it if you'll let me. But right now, we need to figure out how to protect Morrison Tech. I have information that can help you patch the vulnerability faster. I've been studying your architecture, and I know where the weak points are. If you'll let me help, I don't want your help. Rachel's voice was cold. I don't want anything from you. You're exactly what I've spent my career trying to avoid. Someone who sees people as chess pieces instead of human beings. You played me, Tyler. You manipulated me into trusting you so you could gather intelligence on my company. That's not what happened, isn't it? You started talking to me in the parking garage. You asked questions about my company. You gained my trust and got me to open up. And all along, you were Richard Bennett's son, investigating the competitor. How is that not manipulation? Tyler felt like he was drowning. Because somewhere along the way, it stopped being investigation and started being real. I fell in love with you, Rachel. That wasn't part of any plan. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. Don't you dare tell me you love me when everything about us has been a lie. Not everything. My feelings weren't lies. The way I see you, the way I care about you, that's all real. I can't do this right now. Rachel grabbed her bag. I have a company to save, alone, like I should have been doing all along instead of wasting time with someone who was using me. She walked out of the coffee shop and Tyler let her go. Because what could he say? She was right. He'd lied to her, manipulated her, broken her trust in ways that might never be repaired, but he'd meant what he said. He loved her, and he was going to fix this, whether she wanted his help or not. Rachel drove back to Morrison Tech with tears streaming down her face, furious at herself for crying. She was a CEO. She'd built a $50 million company from nothing. She'd survived countless rejections, hostile competitors, and impossible odds. She shouldn't be this destroyed by the revelation that a man she'd known for 2 months had lied to her. But it wasn't just the lie. It was what the lie represented. That once again, Rachel had been naive enough to trust someone, to let her guard down, to believe that maybe she could have something real outside of work. And once again, she'd been wrong. Tyler Bennett. She should have known. She should have questioned how a delivery driver could afford nice clothes and talk intelligently about business strategy and seem so comfortable in expensive restaurants. She should have been more suspicious when he asked pointed questions about her company, but she'd been so desperate for connection, so lonely after years of optimizing everything else out of her life, that she'd ignored every warning sign. And now, Richard Bennett, the man who represented everything Rachel despised about the tech industry, was going to destroy her company, using information his son had gathered while pretending to care about her. Rachel pulled into Morrison Tech's parking garage, wiped her eyes, and forced herself back into CEO mode. She couldn't afford to fall apart right now. Her company was under attack, and she was the only one who could save it. She went straight to Jennifer's office. Tell me everything. What did the security audit find? Jennifer looked exhausted. Someone's been probing our systems for weeks, maybe longer. They were sophisticated, covered their tracks well, but we found traces in the access logs. They identified the vulnerability. We have to assume they know everything about it. Bennett Industries? That would be my guess. The timing is suspicious. We've been competing hard for the transglobal contract, and if Bennett can discredit our security before the decision's made... Jennifer trailed off. Rachel, we're not ready. The patch won't be complete for at least 2 more weeks. If they go public now, then we go public first. The decision crystallized in Rachel's mind with sudden clarity. We announce the vulnerability ourselves. We're transparent about it, what it is, how we discovered it, what we're doing to fix it. We control the narrative instead of letting Bennett Industries control it for us. Jennifer stared at her. That's going to tank our stock price. Clients are going to panic. The transglobal contract is already lost if Bennett announces first. At least this way, we maintain integrity. We admit the mistake, we show we're fixing it responsibly, and we don't let Richard Bennett make us look incompetent or dishonest. Rachel was already pulling up her laptop. Call an emergency board meeting. We're making the announcement today. Rachel, are you sure about this? Once we go public, there's no taking it back. I'm sure. This is who Morrison Tech is. We don't hide from our problems. We face them. Rachel met Jennifer's eyes. Even when facing them costs us everything. The next 4 hours were chaos. Rachel called an emergency board meeting and explained the situation, the security vulnerability, the evidence someone had been probing their systems, her decision to go public immediately. The board was split. Half supported her transparency, believing it would preserve Morrison Tech's reputation for integrity. The other half argued it was commercial suicide, that they should try to patch the vulnerability quietly and hope Bennett Industries' evidence wasn't solid enough to prove anything. Rachel listened to all of it, then made her decision. We're going public. Draft the press release. I want complete technical transparency, what the vulnerability is, how it could be exploited, what we're doing to fix it, and our timeline. I'll do a video statement taking full responsibility. Rachel, one of the board members said carefully, this could destroy the company. Our clients trust us with their most sensitive data. If they lose faith in our security, then we'll earn that faith back by being honest, Rachel interrupted. I'm not going to become the kind of CEO who hides problems and hopes no one notices. That's not who I am, and it's not who Morrison Tech is. She spent the next 2 hours writing and rewriting the press release, working with her legal team to make sure they were disclosing everything necessary while protecting the company from liability. She recorded a video statement where she looked directly into the camera and explained everything, the vulnerability, the timeline, the steps they were taking, and her personal apology for not being transparent sooner. I made a mistake, Rachel said to the camera, her voice steady. When we discovered this vulnerability, I made the decision to fix it quietly rather than immediately disclosing it to our clients. I believed I was protecting the company, but I was actually violating the core value that Morrison Tech was built on, transparency. I'm sorry. To our clients, to our employees, to everyone who trusted us, I'm sorry. We're fixing this, and we're going to do better. At 4 p.m., Morrison Tech published the press release and Rachel's video simultaneously. Within 15 minutes, the tech news sites picked it up. Within an hour, it was the top story on every major business publication. Rachel's phone exploded with calls from investors, clients, journalists. She ignored all of them and watched the stock price. Morrison Tech's valuation dropped 20% in the first hour, then 30%, then 40%. Jennifer came into Rachel's office looking stricken. TransGlobal just called. They're pulling their contract and going with Bennett Industries. Rachel nodded. She'd expected that. Who else? Data Corp, Net Solutions, and Quantum Analytics. So far, 3 of their largest clients. That was probably $15 million in annual revenue gone. Okay, who's staying? Most of the mid-sized clients. A lot of them actually called to thank you for the transparency. They said they appreciate knowing exactly what's happening instead of reading about it in a competitor's press release. It was something. Not enough to save the company, but something. Rachel's phone rang. Richard Bennett. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Ms. Morrison. Richard's voice was smooth and satisfied. I have to admit, I didn't expect you to self-destruct quite so thoroughly. Usually I have to work harder to destroy my competitors. Is there a reason you're calling, Mr. Bennett, or did you just want to gloat? Actually, I'm calling to make an offer. Bennett Industries is prepared to acquire Morrison Tech. We'll honor your current contracts with the clients who haven't fled. We'll retain your key employees, and we'll pay you, let's say, $5 million for the company. That's generous, considering your current valuation. $5 million. For a company Rachel had spent 8 years building, a company that had been worth $50 million this morning. It was insulting. I'm not interested in selling, Rachel said. Really? You'd rather watch Morrison Tech die slowly? Because that's your alternative. You've lost your major clients, your investors are panicking, and your reputation is destroyed. Take the offer, Ms. Morrison. It's better than bankruptcy." No. Rachel's voice was firm. Morrison Tech isn't for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. I'll rebuild it from the ground up if I have to. But I'm not handing it over to someone who represents everything I've spent my career fighting against. Your pride is going to cost you everything. My integrity is worth more than my pride. Goodbye, Mr. Bennett. Rachel hung up and sat very still at her desk. Morrison Tech was dying. She'd killed it herself by being honest about the vulnerability. In trying to do the right thing, she'd destroyed everything she'd built. But she didn't regret it. Because the alternative, hiding the flaw, letting Richard Bennett expose her publicly, becoming the kind of CEO who prioritized optics over honesty, would have destroyed her in a different way. There was a knock on her door. Tyler walked in. "Get out," Rachel said immediately. "I know you don't want to see me, but I have information you need." Tyler closed the door behind him and walked to her desk. "I know how to fix the vulnerability. I've been studying your architecture and I know exactly what needs to be modified. I can have it patched in 3 days instead of 2 weeks. I don't want your help. I know. But your company needs it, and I'm offering it with no strings attached. Let me fix this, Rachel. Let me do something right." Rachel wanted to refuse, but she looked at Tyler, really looked at him, and saw exhaustion and guilt and desperate sincerity in his expression. He'd lied to her, yes, but he was offering to save her company anyway. "Why?" she asked. "Why do you care? You're Richard Bennett's son. Letting Morrison Tech fail benefits your family." "Because I'm not my father," Tyler said simply, "and because I meant what I said. I love you, Rachel. Even if you never forgive me, even if you hate me forever, I love you. And I can't stand by and watch something you built get destroyed, especially when I helped cause it." Rachel felt her defenses cracking. She was so tired. Tired of carrying everything alone, tired of making impossible decisions, tired of pretending she didn't need help. 3 days? She asked quietly. 3 days. I promise. And then you'll leave? No more showing up at my office, no more trying to talk to me? Tyler's expression was pained, but he nodded. If that's what you want, I'll fix the vulnerability and then I'll disappear. You'll never have to see me again. It should have been what Rachel wanted. But the thought of never seeing Tyler again hurt in ways she wasn't ready to examine. "Okay," she said. "Fix it. I'll have Jennifer give you access to everything you need." Tyler nodded and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Rachel, for what it's worth, you made the right decision, going public with the vulnerability. It took courage and integrity, and it's exactly what separates you from people like my father. It's also destroying my company. Maybe. Or maybe it's saving it in a way you can't see yet. Not every victory looks like profit margins." Tyler met her eyes. "You built something that matters. Don't forget that." Then he was gone, leaving Rachel alone with the ruins of her company and the uncomfortable realization that even after everything, even after the lies and betrayal, she still felt something for Tyler Bennett, that refusing to go away. Tyler worked for 72 hours straight, barely sleeping, surviving on coffee and determination. Jennifer had been skeptical when Rachel explained that Tyler, the delivery driver, was actually Richard Bennett's son and a technical expert who could fix their vulnerability. But when Tyler had started talking about Morrison Tech's architecture in detail, pointing out exactly where the weakness originated and how it could be patched, Jennifer's skepticism had turned to grudging respect. "You really know what you're doing," she'd said on the first night, watching Tyler rewrite code with the kind of fluency that came from years of experience. "I was being groomed to run Bennett Industries," Tyler had explained. "That meant understanding every aspect of the business, including the technical side. My father made sure I could talk to engineers and understand exactly what we were building, and now you're using that knowledge to help his competitor. Now, I'm using it to help the person I care about." Tyler had continued typing without looking up. "That's all that matters. The patch was complex. The vulnerability had originated in Morrison Tech's authentication layer, the system that verified user identities and granted access to data. Tyler had to rebuild the entire verification protocol without disrupting service for Morrison Tech's remaining clients. It required elegant solutions to complicated problems, and it required working in perfect coordination with Morrison Tech's engineering team. Tyler barely left the office. He sent for clothes from his apartment, took showers in the building's gym, and slept in 2-hour bursts on the couch in Jennifer's office. He saw Rachel occasionally, passing in hallways, briefly in meetings, but she didn't speak to him beyond what was necessary for the work. It hurt more than Tyler had expected. He'd known Rachel would be angry, known she'd feel betrayed, but he hadn't anticipated the complete coldness of her dismissal. She looked through him like he didn't exist, like the past 2 months had been erased completely. But Tyler kept working. Because this was all he could give her now, his expertise, his labor, his desperate attempt to fix at least one thing he'd broken. On the 3rd day, at 2 in the morning, Tyler ran the final test. The entire engineering team was gathered in the server room, exhausted and anxious. Rachel stood in the back, her arms crossed, watching without expression. Tyler initiated the security scan, a comprehensive test that would probe every aspect of the newly patched authentication system, trying to find weaknesses. The room was silent except for the hum of servers and the soft clicking of keyboards. The scan ran for 20 minutes. Then the results populated on the main monitor. No vulnerabilities detected. Jennifer let out a breath she'd been holding. Run it again. Different parameters. Tyler ran 3 more scans, each one using different attack vectors, each one designed to find any remaining weakness in the system. All of them came back clean. "It works," Jennifer said, and Tyler heard disbelief in her voice. "It actually works. The vulnerability is gone." The engineering team erupted in exhausted cheers. People were hugging, laughing, a few were crying. Tyler felt the tension drain from his body. 3 days of barely sleeping, of pushing himself beyond what he'd thought he was capable of, and it had worked. He turned to look at Rachel. She was staring at the monitor, her expression unreadable. Then her eyes met his, and Tyler saw something complicated there. Gratitude, pain, anger, and something else he couldn't name. "Thank you," Rachel said quietly, her voice barely audible over the celebrating engineers. "You did what you promised." "I meant what I said," Tyler replied. "I'll leave now. You won't have to see me again." He started toward the door, but Rachel's voice stopped him. "Tyler, wait," he turned. Rachel was walking toward him, and the entire room had gone quiet, everyone watching this exchange they didn't fully understand. "Can we talk?" Rachel asked. "Privately?" Tyler nodded and followed her to her office. Rachel closed the door and stood by the window looking out at Seattle's night skyline. Tyler waited, his heart pounding. "You saved my company," Rachel said finally. "You worked for 3 days straight to fix a problem you didn't create, for a person who told you she never wanted to see you again." "Why? I told you why. I love you. You lied to me for months. You investigated my company, you hid your identity, you manipulated me into trusting you. How am I supposed to reconcile that with love?" Tyler took a breath. "I can't make excuses for what I did. I lied, and that was wrong. But I need you to understand how it happened. When I first started paying attention to Morrison Tech, it was investigation. I wanted to understand if you were different from my father, or if you were another CEO willing to cut corners for profit. But then I met you, and you were nothing like what I expected. You were brilliant and driven, and you actually cared about doing things right. And somewhere along the way, investigation became something else. I wasn't gathering intelligence anymore. I was falling in love with you. But you didn't tell me the truth. No, because I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew who I really was, you'd see me as Richard Bennett's son instead of just Tyler. Afraid you'd assume I was like him. And then, the longer I waited, the harder it became to come clean, because I knew how betrayed you'd feel. Tyler moved closer. I was a coward, Rachel. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. But my feelings for you were never a lie. Every moment we spent together, every conversation, every time I told you I cared about you, that was real. Rachel's eyes were shining with unshed tears. I want to believe you, but I don't know how to trust you again. Then don't. Not right away. Tyler's voice was earnest. Let me earn it back. Let me prove to you that I'm not my father, that I'm not someone who sees you as a competitor or a strategic advantage. Let me show you who I really am without the lies this time. And who are you, Tyler Bennett? Without the delivery uniform, without the hidden identity? Who are you actually? Tyler thought about it. I'm someone who walked away from $3 billion because I didn't want to become the kind of person who values profit over people. I'm someone who's been trying to figure out how to build a life that actually means something instead of just accumulating wealth. I'm someone who fell in love with a woman who's braver and more ethical than anyone I've ever met. And I'm someone who's terrified that he's destroyed the best thing that ever happened to him because he was too afraid to be honest. Rachel was quiet for a long time. Then she said, Your father called me again today. He increased his offer to buy Morrison Tech. $10 million. Are you going to take it? No. Even though it would solve a lot of problems. Even though I've lost major clients and my investors are panicking and I don't know if Morrison Tech will survive this. I'm not selling to Richard Bennett. Rachel finally turned to look at Tyler. You asked me once if I liked running a company, and I said I liked building things. But what I didn't say was that I liked building things the right way, with integrity, even when it costs me. That's why you're better than him, Tyler said. Better than both of us, honestly. You have principles you won't compromise, even when compromising would be easier. My principles might bankrupt me, or they might save you. Morrison Tech's vulnerability is fixed now. You were transparent about the problem, you took responsibility, and you solved it. That means something. Companies that hide their problems eventually get exposed anyway. You controlled the narrative, you maintained your integrity, and now you have a genuinely secure product. That's valuable, Rachel smiled slightly. You sound like a business consultant, not a delivery driver. I was trained at Wharton and groomed to run a billion-dollar company. Old habits. Tyler's expression turned serious. Rachel, I know I hurt you. I know earning back your trust is going to take time, if it's even possible. But I'm asking for a chance. Not to go back to what we had. We can't do that. Because what we had was built on lies I told. But to start over, honestly this time, let me show you who I really am, and you can decide if that person is worth giving a second chance. Rachel studied him for a long moment. Tyler could see her thinking, weighing costs and benefits the way she probably evaluated every major decision. Finally, she said, I'm not ready to jump back into a relationship with you. I need time to process everything that's happened, but I'm willing to try being friends, actual friends where we're both honest about who we are and what we want. No more secrets. No more secrets, Tyler agreed. I promise. And you need to figure out your relationship with your father. You can't keep running from Bennett Industries forever. At some point, you're going to have to decide who you are in relation to that company and that legacy. Tyler nodded. She was right. He'd been hiding for 18 months, but hiding wasn't the same as moving forward. I'll figure it out. But first, I need to help you save Morrison Tech. I thought you were leaving. I was. But then I realized I've spent 18 months trying to escape my family's business instead of using what I know to build something better. Maybe it's time I stopped running and started building. Tyler met Rachel's eyes. If you'll let me, I'd like to help you rebuild Morrison Tech. Not as Richard Bennett's son infiltrating your company, but as someone who believes in what you're building and wants to be part of it. Rachel looked surprised. You want to work at Morrison Tech? I want to help you build a company that proves my father wrong. A company that succeeds because it does things right, not because it crushes its competitors. That's what Morrison Tech could be, Rachel. And I want to be part of making that happen. Even though your father would see that as betrayal, especially because my father would see it as betrayal. It's time I stopped living my life in reaction to him and started living it according to my own values. Tyler smiled. Besides, someone has to make sure you actually take breaks and eat meals that aren't delivered to your desk. Might as well be me, Rachel laughed. A real laugh, the first genuine one Tyler had heard from her in days. You're serious about this? Completely. I'll start at whatever position you think makes sense. I know I need to earn credibility with your team, but I can help, Rachel. I know I can. Okay, Rachel said. You can start Monday. We'll figure out your role and your title and everything else. But Tyler, this is a professional relationship. I'm not ready for anything more than that. I understand. And if you lie to me again about anything, you're done. No second chances after this one. I won't lie to you again, Tyler said. I promise. They stood there in her office. Two people who'd found each other in unexpected circumstances, lost each other to lies and betrayal, and were now tentatively building something new from the ruins. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was honest. And for both of them, honesty felt like hope. 6 months later, Morrison Tech had not only survived, it was thriving in ways Rachel had never anticipated. The transparency about the security vulnerability, combined with the speed and thoroughness of the fix, had actually strengthened the company's reputation. Yes, they'd lost some major clients in the immediate aftermath, but the mid-sized companies that had stayed were fiercely loyal, and new clients had started coming specifically because Morrison Tech had proven they'd admit mistakes and fix them rather than hiding problems. Tech publications had written articles praising Rachel's integrity. Morrison Tech shows how to handle a crisis right, one headline had read. Another had called her the CEO who chose ethics over easy profits. The publicity had attracted attention from investors who valued long-term sustainability over quick returns, and Morrison Tech had closed a new funding round at a higher valuation than before the crisis. Tyler had joined the company, officially as VP of Strategic Development, a title that gave him broad authority to work on whatever needed attention, from technical architecture to business strategy. He'd had to prove himself to Morrison Tech's employees, many of whom had been skeptical of Richard Bennett's son joining their ranks. But Tyler had won them over through competence, humility, and genuine commitment to the company's mission. He'd also finally confronted his father. Tyler had gone to Bennett Industries headquarters, walked into Richard's office unannounced, and told him that he was done running, that he was working at Morrison Tech officially, that he believed in what they were building, and that Richard could either accept that his son had chosen his own path or continue being angry about it. But either way, Tyler wasn't changing his mind. Richard had been furious, of course. Threatened to cut Tyler off completely, to remove him from the will, to publicly disown him. Tyler had listened to all of it calmly, then said, "I don't need your money, Dad. I never did. What I needed was for you to see me as a person instead of an heir to your empire. But you can't do that, so I'm building something else, with people who actually value integrity over market share." He'd walked out, and he hadn't looked back. It had been painful. Tyler still loved his father, despite everything, but also liberating. For the first time in his life, Tyler was defining himself by his own choices, rather than in reaction to his family's expectations. His relationship with Rachel had evolved slowly, carefully. For the first 3 months, they'd maintained strict professional boundaries. Tyler had been patient, giving Rachel space to process her feelings and rebuild trust at her own pace. They'd worked together daily, and gradually, Rachel had started to see who Tyler really was, not the delivery driver persona he'd created, not Richard Bennett's rebellious son, but simply Tyler. Someone thoughtful and hard-working, someone who cared deeply about doing things right. Someone who made her laugh during stressful meetings and brought her coffee exactly how she liked it without being asked. 4 months after Tyler joined Morrison Tech, Rachel had invited him to dinner. Not a date, she'd emphasized, just dinner between colleagues who'd become friends. They'd gone to a small Thai restaurant and talked for 3 hours, and at the end of the night, Rachel had said, "I think I'm ready to try this." "Actually, try this. If you still want to." "I've wanted to since the day I met you," Tyler had said. "But I want to do this right this time. No rushing, no pressure, just honest." They'd started over, dating properly this time with full transparency about who they were and what they wanted. It was different from before, less intense maybe, but more solid. Built on truth instead of half-truths and hidden identities. Now, 6 months after the crisis that had almost destroyed everything, Tyler and Rachel stood together in Morrison Tech's newly renovated office space. The company had moved to a larger building to accommodate their growing team. They'd just finished giving a tour to a potential new client, a Fortune 500 company that had specifically sought out Morrison Tech because of their reputation for ethical business practices. I think that went well, Rachel said as the client left. They're going to sign. I can tell. Definitely, Tyler agreed. When you explained how we handle security audits, I saw their CTO literally taking notes. Rachel smiled. You realize that 6 months ago I was convinced Morrison Tech was going to collapse. And now we're bigger than we've ever been. How did that happen? You happened, Tyler said. You made the hard choice to be transparent even when it terrified you. You built a company with actual principles, and people responded to that. I just helped with the technical details. You did more than that. Rachel paused, searching for words. You showed me that it's possible to build something meaningful and not have to sacrifice everything else. That I could have a company and a life. I'd forgotten that was possible. Tyler pulled her close. You're allowed to have both. Actually, I'd argue you're better at your job because you have both. You're less stressed, more creative, more patient with your team. Turns out CEOs are more effective when they're not running on empty. Who would have thought? Rachel laughed, then turned serious. I'm glad you're here, Tyler. I'm glad we worked through everything. I'm glad I gave you a second chance. I'm glad you did too. Though I'll probably spend the rest of my life trying to deserve it. That sounds exhausting. How about you just spend the rest of your life being yourself? That seems to be working pretty well. They stood there in the empty office, looking out at the Seattle skyline. Two people who'd found each other through deception, but built something real through honesty. Morrison Tech was thriving, their relationship was strong, and they'd both learned that the most important thing you could build wasn't a company or a fortune. It was a life that reflected your actual values. Tyler's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw the article about Morrison Tech's growth. Impressive. Dad. It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. Tyler showed Rachel, and she squeezed his hand. Progress, she said. Progress, Tyler agreed. Maybe someday he and his father would fully reconcile. Or maybe they wouldn't. But Tyler had stopped defining himself by that relationship. He'd found something better. A purpose that mattered, work that challenged him, and a partner who saw him clearly and loved him anyway. That evening, they had dinner at Tyler's apartment, no longer the tiny studio in the university district, but a comfortable place near Morrison Tech that they'd been talking about moving into together. Tyler cooked risotto again, the same dish he'd made the first time Rachel had come over, back when everything between them had been built on lies. Remember the first time you came here? Tyler asked as they ate. You were so stressed about the hypothetical problem you couldn't talk about. The security vulnerability, Rachel said, which turned out to be very real and nearly destroyed everything, but didn't, because you handled it the right way. Rachel set down her fork. Can I tell you something? That day you told me the truth about who you were in the coffee shop, I was so angry. I felt betrayed and manipulated and stupid for not seeing through your disguise. But later, after everything calmed down, I realized something. You gave me the information I needed to fix the vulnerability fast. If you hadn't helped, if you'd actually walked away like I told you to, Morrison Tech probably would have failed. The 2-week timeline was too slow. We would have lost too many clients. You would have figured it out. Maybe. But you helped me figure it out faster. And you did it knowing I might never forgive you. That's what changed my mind eventually. Not the grand gestures or the apologies, but the fact that you helped anyway. Because it was right, not because you'd get something from it. Tyler reached across the table and took her hand. I meant what I said. I love you, Rachel. Not because of your company or your success or anything you've built. Just because you're you, stubborn and brilliant and ethical even when it costs you everything. I love you too, Rachel said. The real you. Not the delivery driver persona. Not Richard Bennett's son, just Tyler, the person who walked away from billions because he wanted to build something that mattered. The person who works 80-hour weeks helping my company succeed. The person who reminds me to take breaks and brings me coffee and makes me laugh when everything feels impossible. They finished dinner and moved to the couch, and Rachel curled up against Tyler's shoulder, feeling more content than she'd felt in years. Morrison Tech was stable. Her relationship was honest. She'd built a life that actually felt like living instead of just endless work. What are you thinking about? Tyler asked. "I'm thinking that sometimes the best things come from the worst situations. If you hadn't investigated my company, if I hadn't been forced to go public with the vulnerability, if we hadn't had to rebuild everything from honesty, we wouldn't be here. Morrison Tech wouldn't be stronger. We wouldn't be better. Adversity as opportunity? Something like that. Or maybe just, sometimes you have to break things completely before you can build them right." Rachel smiled. "I spent 8 years building Morrison Tech on my own, refusing to let anyone help because I was afraid of depending on people. And then you came along and everything fell apart, and I had to learn to trust someone. And now the company's better because I'm not carrying everything alone." "Teamwork," Tyler said. "Turns out it's useful." "Who knew?" Rachel laughed. "The overachieving lone wolf CEO discovers that asking for help actually works. Revolutionary." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Tyler thought about the journey that had brought him here. From Bennett Industries' heir to delivery driver to Morrison Tech's VP of Strategic Development. From hiding his identity to living transparently. From his father's definition of success to his own. "Tyler," Rachel said quietly, "Thank you. For being patient with me. For earning back my trust. For being exactly who you are. Thank you for giving me the chance. For seeing past the lies to who I was trying to become. We make a good team. We really do." And they did. Tyler and Rachel had built something better than what they'd lost. A relationship based on honesty, a company built on integrity, and a future they were creating together one choice at a time. Sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who changes everything. Sometimes the hidden truth is the foundation of something better. And sometimes the delivery driver knows exactly what the CEO needs, not advice or strategy or business acumen, but simply the reminder that being human matters more than being perfect. 1 year after Tyler first walked into Morrison Tech as a delivery driver, the company was celebrating its biggest milestone yet. Morrison Tech had just been acquired, not by Bennett Industries in a hostile takeover, but by a massive tech conglomerate that valued their ethical approach and wanted to scale it globally. The acquisition was for $200 million, 4 times what the company had been worth before the security crisis. Rachel had negotiated terms that protected Morrison Tech's culture and autonomy. She'd remain as CEO, her team would stay intact, and the company would operate as an independent subsidiary with its own values and mission. It was the best possible outcome, resources to grow without sacrificing principles. The celebration party was held at a waterfront venue overlooking Elliott Bay. Morrison Tech's entire team was there, along with investors, clients, and partners. Rachel gave a speech, thanking everyone who'd believed in the company. "Especially during the darkest moments. A year ago," Rachel said. "Standing at the front of the room, Morrison Tech faced a crisis that could have destroyed us. We had a security vulnerability, we'd lost major clients, and our future was uncertain. But we made a choice. We chose transparency over hiding. We chose integrity over easy profits. We chose to fix the problem right instead of covering it up. And that choice, that commitment to doing things the right way even when it's hard, is what made this moment possible." The room erupted in applause. Rachel smiled and continued. "I also want to acknowledge someone who played a crucial role in our success. Tyler Bennett joined Morrison Tech during our crisis, and he's been instrumental in rebuilding what we almost lost. He brought technical expertise, strategic thinking, and a commitment to ethical business that aligns perfectly with our values. Tyler, would you come up here?" Tyler walked to the front, slightly embarrassed by the attention. Rachel handed him the microphone. "I'm not great at speeches," Tyler said, and the room laughed. "But I want to say that working at Morrison Tech has been the best decision I've ever made. I came from a background where success was measured purely in dollars and market share, where crushing competitors was valued more than creating something meaningful. Morrison Tech showed me a different way. Rachel showed me that you can build a successful company without sacrificing your principles. That integrity isn't weakness, it's strength. And I'm grateful every day that I get to be part of this team." He handed the microphone back to Rachel, and she pulled him into a hug while the room applauded. Later, after the speeches and toasts had ended and the party had shifted to conversation and mingling, Tyler and Rachel stood on the venue's outdoor deck. looking at Seattle's lights reflected on the water. $200 million, Rachel said, still processing the number. I built a $200 million company. You built something more valuable than that, Tyler said. You built a company that proved ethical business actually works. That transparency and integrity aren't just nice ideas, they're competitive advantages. A lot of entrepreneurs are going to study what you did and try to replicate it. We did it, Rachel corrected. I couldn't have saved Morrison Tech without you. The technical fixes, the strategic planning, the constant reminders that I didn't have to carry everything alone. You made all of that possible. Tyler smiled. We make a good team? We really do. Rachel turned to face him. So now that we're wildly successful and have more resources than we know what to do with, what do you want to do next? Honestly, I want to keep doing exactly what we're doing. Building Morrison Tech, proving that good companies can win, maybe traveling more on weekends when we're not working 80-hour weeks. Tyler paused. And there's something else I've been thinking about. What's that? Tyler reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Rachel's eyes widened. Tyler, let me say this first, Tyler interrupted gently. Rachel Morrison, you're the smartest, most ethical, most stubborn person I've ever met. You challenge me to be better every single day. You built something extraordinary from nothing, and you did it the right way, even when the wrong way would have been easier. I want to spend the rest of my life supporting you, challenging you, and building things with you. Will you marry me? Rachel's eyes were filling with tears. You're proposing at our company acquisition party? I figured it was thematically appropriate. We're celebrating building something together. Might as well make it official in multiple ways. Rachel laughed through her tears. That's terrible logic. Is that a no? That's a yes, you ridiculous man. Yes, I'll marry you. Tyler slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple, elegant design that suited Rachel perfectly, and kissed her while the lights of Seattle glittered around them. They stood there for a while, wrapped in each other, looking out at the city where they'd both reinvented themselves. Tyler had gone from Bennett Industries heir to delivery driver to Morrison Tech executive, finally finding his place. Rachel had gone from workaholic CEO to someone who'd learned to balance success with life, ambition with love. What do you think your father would say about all this? Rachel asked. Tyler considered. Probably that I'm an idiot for working at a competitor and marrying their CEO, but you know what? I don't care anymore. I used to define myself by rebelling against him, trying to be his opposite. But now I'm just being myself, building things I believe in with people I respect, according to values that matter to me. That's enough. That's more than enough, Rachel agreed. That's everything. They went back inside to rejoin the party, and Rachel held up her hand to show her ring to Jennifer, who immediately screamed and hugged them both. The news spread through the party quickly, and soon Morrison Tech's entire team was celebrating two victories, the acquisition and the engagement. Later that night, after the party had ended and they'd driven home together, Rachel and Tyler sat on their couch talking about the future, about how they'd use Morrison Tech's new resources, about wedding plans, about whether they wanted kids someday, about all the possibilities that had seemed impossible a year ago. Can I tell you something? Rachel said. The day you told me who you really were in that coffee shop, I was devastated. I thought my life was falling apart. My company was dying. The person I'd trusted had been lying to me, and everything I'd built seemed like it was crumbling. I remember, Tyler said quietly. But looking back now, I realize that day was the beginning of everything good that's happened since, because it forced me to stop hiding, to be completely honest about Morrison Tech's problems, about my own vulnerabilities, about what I actually needed. And that honesty, that complete transparency, is what saved everything. If you hadn't forced that crisis, I would have kept trying to handle everything alone until I burned out completely. So you're saying my elaborate deception was actually helpful? Tyler's tone was teasing. I'm saying that sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes, if you're brave enough to face them honestly. Rachel kissed him. But don't lie to me again. I forgave you once. There won't be a second time. Never again, Tyler promised. From now on, complete honesty. Even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's hard. Deal. They fell asleep that night planning their future together, both their personal future and Morrison Tech's future. the two now happily intertwined. Tyler had finally found his purpose, building something that mattered with someone he loved. Rachel had finally learned that success meant more than company valuations and market share. It meant building a life that felt authentic and sustainable. And Morrison Tech, the company that had nearly died from a security vulnerability and a crisis of leadership, had emerged stronger than ever, not because they'd hidden their problems or crushed their competitors, but because they'd faced their challenges with integrity and rebuilt from honesty. Sometimes the delivery driver really is the hidden heir to billions. Sometimes the CEO really does need someone to remind her that she's human. And sometimes, the best thing you can build isn't a company or a fortune, it's a partnership based on truth, trust, and the courage to keep choosing honesty even when lies would be easier. Tyler and Rachel had built that partnership. And everything else, Morrison Tech's success, their personal happiness, their future together, had followed from that foundation. So, what did you think of Tyler and Rachel's story? Rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments. My favorite moment was when Tyler worked 72 hours straight to fix the vulnerability he'd helped cause. That's the kind of redemption that really matters. What was your favorite part? And here's the big question. If you were Rachel, would you have given Tyler a second chance after discovering he'd been lying about his identity? Or would you have walked away for good? Drop your thoughts below. I really want to know what you'd do. If this story of hidden identities, second chances, and learning that integrity matters more than winning moved you, subscribe to Deep Stories for more emotional tales every week. Stories about people who aren't what they seem, about love that survives deception, and about discovering that sometimes the person you underestimate is exactly who you need. Hit that subscribe button and join our community. I'll see you in the next story.